These are three simple steps that have allowed America's wealthiest families to legally avoid paying billions in taxes for over a century. Buy, borrow, die. It sounds almost too simple to be real, but this strategy has enabled billionaires like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Warren Buffett to live extraordinarily lavish lifestyles while paying virtually nothing in federal income taxes. The phrase buy, borrow, die was coined by Professor Edward McCaffrey at USC Law School back in the 1990s. He wanted to explain in simple terms how the ultra-wealthy get rich and stay that way. What he discovered was a perfectly legal tax strategy that has been hiding in plain sight for generations. Here's how it works. First, you buy assets that appreciate in value over time. Think stocks, real estate, or shares in a company you founded. The key is that these assets grow in value, but you never sell them. Second, when you need cash to live on, you do not sell those assets. Instead, you borrow money using those assets as collateral. Third, you hold on to those assets until you die, and then your heirs inherit them with a stepped-up basis, which essentially erases the capital gains taxes that would have been owed. The genius of this strategy lies in how our tax system works. Assets that are not sold are not taxed, no matter how much they increase in value. Your Tesla stock could skyrocket from $10 to $1,000 per share, but as long as you do not sell, you owe no taxes on that $990 in gain. Meanwhile, borrowed money is not considered income, so those loans are not taxed either. When ProPublica analyzed tax records in their groundbreaking 2021 investigation, they uncovered something stunning. The 25 wealthiest Americans saw their net worth rise by $401 billion between 2014 and 2018. During that same period, they paid just $13.6 billion in federal income taxes. That is a true tax rate of 3.4%. Compare that to the typical American worker, who pays about 14% of their income in federal taxes. Let us look at some specific examples. Jeff Bezos paid $1.4 billion in personal federal taxes between 2006 and 2018 on $6.5 billion in reported income. But here's the kicker. His wealth increased by $127 billion during that same period. His true tax rate was 1.1%. That is less than what a minimum wage worker pays. Warren Buffett's numbers are even more shocking. According to Forbes, his wealth rose $24.3 billion from 2014 to 2018. Giving him a true tax rate of just 0.1%. Elon Musk paid $68,000 in federal income tax in 2015, $65,000 in 2017, and $0 in 2018. Between 2014 and 2018, his true tax rate was 3.27%. But here's where it gets really interesting. These billionaires are not just hoarding cash under their mattresses. They are living incredibly luxurious lifestyles funded almost entirely by borrowed money. According to research firm Audit Analytics, Elon Musk has more than $90 billion worth of shares pledged for loans. That makes him the largest stock debtor in dollar terms among executives and directors. Larry Ellison, Oracle's chairman, has $24 billion in pledged shares. In SEC filings, Musk was listed as holding over 238 million shares of Tesla stock pledged as collateral for personal loans. The borrowing happens through securities-backed lines of credit called SBLOCs. These are specialized loans that let wealthy individuals borrow against their investment portfolios without selling anything. You can typically borrow 50 to 95% of your assets' value, depending on what you own and how much it is worth. The minimum is usually around $500,000 in assets, which puts this strategy out of reach for most Americans. Because you are borrowing against your securities rather than selling them, you avoid triggering capital gains taxes entirely. You also continue to benefit from any appreciation in your investments. It is like having your cake and eating it too. The third step, dying, is where the real magic happens for these wealthy families. When someone dies, their heirs inherit assets with a stepped-up basis. This means the assets are valued at their current market price, not what the original owner paid for them. All those unrealized capital gains that built up over decades simply vanish for tax purposes. This stepped-up basis loophole is enormous. According to economists Gabriel Zucman and Emmanuel Saez at UC Berkeley, of the $4.25 trillion in wealth held by U.S. billionaires, some $2.7 trillion is unrealized gains that have never been taxed. The Joint Committee on Taxation estimates that stepped-up basis will cost the federal government $58 billion in lost revenue in 2024 alone. Over time, this loophole enables the super rich to avoid paying more than $40 billion in taxes each year. The Congressional Budget Office found that in 2019, 56% of the benefit from stepped-up basis went to the top 20% of income earners, with 18% going to just the top 1%. Perhaps most strikingly, 55% of the wealth in estates worth more than $100 million has never been, and will never be, subject to any income taxes. The absurdity of this system becomes clear when you look at some specific examples. In 2011, despite being worth about $18 billion, Jeff Bezos reported annual investment losses that exceeded his other income, wiping out his tax liability entirely. Because of this on-paper poverty, billionaire Bezos was able to claim the same $4,000 child tax credit intended to help working parents make ends meet. Professor McCaffrey, who first identified this pattern, puts it bluntly. It is a simple fact that billionaires in America can live very extraordinarily well, completely tax-free off their wealth. There is no doubt that rich people do not pay much tax, and that buy, borrow, die explains it. But this has been true for 100 years. This is not some recent development or loophole that accidentally slipped through. It has been a feature of our tax system for generations. The wealthy have simply gotten better at exploiting it as their fortunes have grown. Politicians have started to take notice. Senator Ron Wyden has repeatedly introduced legislation called the billionaires' income tax, which would tax unrealized gains for people with more than $1 billion in assets or $100 million in income for 3 consecutive years. He argues it is fundamentally unfair. A billionaire acquires an asset that steadily gains value. They borrow against it to turn it into income, and if they hold it until they die, the tax disappears. Meanwhile, people who earn a wage are paying taxes out of each and every paycheck. The Biden administration proposed requiring households with more than $100 million in wealth to pay at least 25% in income taxes annually, including on their unrealized gains. But these proposals have consistently failed to gain traction in Congress. Meanwhile, recent legislation has actually made the problem worse. The 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act nearly doubled the estate tax exemption. For 2025, individuals can pass along $13.99 million tax-free, while married couples can transfer $27.98 million. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act made these higher exemptions permanent and will raise them to $15 million per individual starting in 2026. Critics argue that this system creates 2 different tax codes, one for people who work for their money and pay taxes on every paycheck, and another for people wealthy enough to live off borrowed money secured by appreciating assets. It is a system that not only allows extreme wealth to grow tax-free, but ensures it can be passed down through generations without ever being touched by the IRS. The numbers speak for themselves. While working Americans see their wages taxed immediately, billionaires have found a way to build and maintain dynastic wealth that exists almost entirely outside our tax system. Buy, borrow, die isn't just a strategy. It's become the foundation of how generational wealth operates in America. And unless Congress acts, It will continue to be one of the most powerful and perfectly legal ways to avoid paying taxes for the next 100 years.